Welcome to this episode of The People Dividend. I'm your host, Mike Horne, and I am absolutely thrilled to have in our virtual studio today Alice Inoue. And for all of our colleagues in human resources who are listening, this will be a spellbinding episode of The People Dividend. Uh, Alice and her team at yourhappinessyou.com have been at the wellness game, at the wellness business, at the pinnacle of wellness for about 20 years, doing fabulous work in corporations such as McDonald's, Gap, and other leading corporations around the planet. So let me tell you a little bit about Alice before I give her a chance to speak. She has really captured the essence of well being and what that means in organizational life. She's a life expert, the founder of Happiness You. She helps both companies and individuals develop positive mindsets in order to live more inspired in both their professional and personal lives. She was born in San Francisco, raised in Taiwan from the age of 8, entered the University of California as a pre-med student and earned a degree in biology at the age of 20. But rather than going to medical school, and I'd like to talk with her about that at the time, she traveled to Japan to teach English, already fluent in English and Mandarin. She added Japanese to her linguistic skills and cultural studies. In an unexpected shift, she jumped into the world of media, first debuting as a live daily TV show host, followed by years as a bilingual news anchor and host of her own weekly Japanese TV shows. During this time, Alice also served as a spokesperson for a multitude of companies. She's published 9 books: A Loving Guide to Those Shifting Times, Be Happy, It's Your Choice, Feng Shui Your Life, Just Ask Alice, Destination Happiness, Mindful Moments, More Mindful Moments, Master Your Superpowers, and The Best of Mindful Moments. All of her books have won India Excellence Awards in mind, body, and spirit or personal growth categories. So, Alice, I am just absolutely, again, thrilled to have you as a guest. And I'm sure that our audience, all of the HR leaders, consultants, coaches, are going to benefit from our discussion today. So, welcome. How about a few words about yourself?
I haven't had such a great introduction in a long time. You basically took me through my whole life. So obviously, I've done so many things, and I think HR directors would be appalled that I've had 42 different jobs and careers over the course of my short 60 years. But I feel like everything leads you to who you need to be today. And every single thing I've ever done has led me to be able to serve people, help people, understand where people are coming from.
We used to talk a lot about in human resources about work life balance. And I think, like many of my colleagues in human resources, we abandoned that concept because balance is unattainable. But
Yeah.
what we talk about today is we talk about having a good work life blend.
Yeah.
Can you, because sometimes work takes over, sometimes personal life takes over. Where do you come out on that topic? I mean, as an expert in well being.
What's interesting is I have been talking about work life integration for 20
Uh-huh.
years. And it's exactly like you said. When we talk about balance, it's like we just today I was talking to somebody. They said they're at work, they feel guilty for not being with their children. They're at their soccer game feeling guilty for not working. And it's really just a choice. And so what I like to say is that no matter what you do, you're making a choice, and you make a choice based on what you perceive is the greatest advantage to you at that time. And so when we talk about work life integration, it's you're making choices every day in what you perceive to be the best benefit. So it seems ridiculous to feel guilty about it. It's a choice that you make. So that's sort of what I help people do a little bit more. Instead of feeling guilty or trying to balance their life, it's like making a choice because there's a greater advantage, and let it go from there.
One of the things I love that you've said is that every single thing you do and say makes a difference. You are an
Yeah.
intricate and vital part of this world. So do not discount the profound effect that you have on the people around you. So, Alice, in the Wayback Machine, not so long ago, you started Happiness You. What
Yeah.
what what's what is Happiness You?
That's such a thank you so much. It's such a unique, unusual business. When I had the idea, so this is how it was. I was sitting there writing one of my books or trying to write a book, and I used to have this thing like, let me write a book a year, and I was just not able to move forward on it. And I asked myself, what is it you really want to do? Because that's what you do when you coach people. What do you want? Like, what do you want when you're stuck? And then I just had this insight. I want to help people, and I'm putting this in quotes in case you're listening and not watching it. Want to help people, quote unquote, be happy. And like, what does that mean? And I thought to myself, gosh, when we're in school, we learn, get good grades, math, science, right? Find a career, do all these things. But what happens if you've never learned how to balance your emotions or deal with stress and overwhelm or jealousy or envy or breakups or failures? Like all of that emotional stuff is so important. So I thought, what if I could create a space where people could come to learn the things they never learned in school about how to actually live life? Because the bottom line is, after you and I know, after working with thousands of people really just want to feel good
Mm.
and have ease in their life and not have these emotional swings. And I just thought it would be a perfect component. It didn't start out as a corporate thing. It started out as a little community. I had a little classroom. I had membership. People would come and, take classes from me and other professionals. But what happened was, people that came would be like managers at companies, and they would say, oh, can you come in and talk to us? And first it was just very small and organic. And then I realized that there is a place for this in companies. So I created programs, and then I thought companies would pay for it. But no, it's like, wait, if you can help us increase sales and we'll hire you. But this happiness, this positive mindset, like we're not going to pay for that. Do it for free. Come to a lunch and learn. But then I still created all of my systems and all of my classes and all of that. And then the pandemic hit. And
Uh-huh.
boy, we were in place to do not just virtual, but just not just Hawaii, because I live in Hawaii, but all over the world. People somehow were Googling and finding happiness shoes so that we could offer classes on dealing with change, dealing with stress. One of our most popular classes is how to deal with irritating people
Mm.
in the workplace. So yeah, so that's what happiness shoe is. So now I just say that we are a place where you can come to get answers to various challenges you may have, whether it's in work or at home or in school. But life, when we go back to work-life balance, it's not just home and work. It is everything. That is your whole world. So how do we live in our world in a really, as you would say, a very authentic way that's true to who we are?
Yes, and we'll talk about that. And I mean, thank you. As I write a lot on the topic of authentic leadership, and I think about authenticity in some ways as congruence, that
Mm.
you do what you say you're going to do, and even better when your thoughts align with your words and actions. And that produces a kind of happiness. That congruence
Yeah.
produces a kind of internal happiness. And I don't mean the kind of happiness that comes with having a new boyfriend or girlfriend or having the birth of a child, but that kind of happiness that results from congruence. And I think what the research is pretty clear on, and our HR colleagues know this, is that people enjoy working with other happy people.
Is that
Um,
true?
and that's what creates part of a great place to work, or it creates certainly a system where people can do their best work. But you've done some really interesting work, Alice, in a way, on personality and happiness. And I'd like to talk about the system that you've developed and have used in major corporations around the planet.
Yeah, thank you for asking. I don't know if you've ever had this experience, but it's like you just do something because it comes from your heart, and we can use the word authentic. I just thought this would be so much fun to develop something where people could get to know themselves better and get to know others as well. And it was, again, sitting around, and somebody said, your next book should be on positivity, because isn't positivity a superpower? You're always so positive. And they use the word always, but I come across as being more upbeat than not. That you should write a book on like how your mindset works. So I went to my artist, and I said, hey, I want to do a superpower. Positivity is a superpower. Can you draw me a superhero? And he says, well, aren't there more powers than just positivity. And so as he started asking the questions, and he's a little younger than me, but he comes from that time when the superheroes were like the old school superheroes that had virtues and vices and superpowers and weaknesses. And yeah, anyway, he inspired me to think about a system that I learned back when I was doing feng shui, which is all about, harmony in the environment.
Sure.
But there's these things called 5 elements: water, wood, fire, earth, and metal. These 5 elements, they exist in the planet. We drink water, we look at trees, the sun is the fire. So these are elements that are around us. But that system can help us identify personalities that are like those elements. And so what I did was I took those elements and I personified them, and then I created them into superhero forms. And what happens is you take this 5 to 7 minute assessment and you become one of 20 archetypes. And it, like, for example, I test as the intuitive luminary. My assistant, she tests as the efficient producer. You want an efficient producer in someone who is working with you. My other half, he's a chef. He tested as the resourceful creator. So we use these elements to create archetypes, and then you have a manual about your virtues, your superpowers, and not just understanding yourself, but most importantly now, especially in business and being whether you're remote or in person, understanding the people you are working with. The difference is if you have taken DISC or MBT, Myers-Briggs,
MBTI.
Insight, or Predictive Insight, all of those, the day after, you don't really remember. Like if I told you I'm an INFJ, that doesn't mean anything. But if you learn the elements, if you know the elements, you know the people. Like water is transparent. Water people, you can see right through them. Water goes with the flow. People who test high in water go with the flow. They don't like conflict. So once you learn the elements, you learn the people, and then it's in a fun format. So yeah, so I created that just for fun. And I'll just tell you, it has taken me everywhere. I just came back from McDonald's and Gap, and like high level leaderships or teams are finding that this is the best way to connect, because you have fun and then you get to understand each other.
And understanding others has always been central to effective work and effective working relationships. And there's been some shift in that since the pandemic. In some cases, resentment built up between those who had to go to work, those who didn't have to go to work. And maybe that resentment even continues today in some big corporations about people who are going into an office location versus people who are working at home. What's been your experience relative to happiness and happiness systems, in this post-pandemic period?
You know, we've been out of it, so to speak, for a while, but I feel like the residual is still there in
Right.
this unconscious form or unspoken form. And I feel like we're still kind of catching up with ourselves in this. So I don't feel like everyone's back to normal and we're in this set thing. Exactly what you said, that push and pull between people and rules. And I thought I could be at home. I'm just as productive. Why do I have to come in now? So I feel like it's almost harder to work with people now, to help them find that place of content.
And,
Yeah.
and your system can help people to do that because it's not only important to understanding yourself, but it's important to understanding others and what their particular archetypes might be, I would
Yeah,
imagine.
I think what it is we are by nature egotistical beings. We have to work really hard to be considerate. And when we are stressed, when we feel we are wronged, we get into our ego and we sort of create more of a distance between us and the company we work with or the people that we're working with. And so part of it is like the system is great, but it gives me an opportunity to talk about, can we just be human? Like, can we just like connect with people as human beings? And that is sort of the core of my message. That yes, it's okay, right? We feel upset, we feel things aren't fair, but everyone has feelings, and we don't know enough to know where other people are coming from and why they say the things they do and why they do the things they do. So part of it is just sort of coming out of ourselves and have some consideration, because it's natural, right, to care about ourselves. We get very defensive when we feel like we are wronged in some way, or we're being disadvantaged in some way. So that collective bigger picture is what I love to kind of pull people into. I just love your message. Like, just when I was invited to be on your podcast, I was so excited because when I saw like the things that you are doing, and I feel that same way. Like, I really feel like we have to be aligned and genuine and heartfelt in what we do, for people to respond in the same way.
Makes it a lot easier for you to bring your whole self to work, even though there are so many barriers to that for so many. And
Yeah,
that's where I'd like to dig into, Master Your Superpowers, a book that you have, I believe, by the same title, Master Your Superpowers. You referred to the artwork earlier. I was talking with a client this earlier this week who said, so many people are coming to me and they're saying they're overwhelmed by work, they have too much to do. Um, and I was wondering, I mean, from your perspective, from this happiness perspective, what advice or guidance would you give or present to managers about how they do master their superpowers so they can respond in ways that are authentic and true?
yeah, that's such a great question. I think it's first, a lot of times we work, and you probably do the same thing, is like people think that we need to be superheroes and be
Mm,
awesome at every single thing. But the reality is you are a human being. And in as a human being, you have certain areas that we can deem as priorities. So we get a little bit clearer on what are your priorities, because otherwise we're going to compare and contrast to everybody and every single thing that we're doing and come up short. So I think it's mostly it's about knowing yourself and getting clear and just being okay with you being you. And yes, we have 1,000 more things to do on our plate than we ever did. We have more to manage, to juggle. There's emotional things, there's mental, there's just so much. We can't do it all. So it's really just getting clear, on what you can do. And it's I like someone with today was just saying, I feel guilty no matter what I do. And my whole thing was, what's most important is to recognize that the choice that you're making to do one thing and not the other is the best possible choice. We have to be okay with not being 100% trying to be perfect. I find that that's the truth. And also, like managers, like they have to be accountable to someone higher, but then they have to oversee teams of people. So they get that squeeze, and it can just be so hard if you don't get aligned and sort of get back to what is important, because you can't do it all.
Okay, I think about some of my hardened C-suite clients,
Yes.
people who are managing large organizations, big teams, have often, feel the weight of responsibility so squarely on their shoulders.
Yeah.
These men and women and others. So here's Alice Inoue. She's an expert on happiness. What's that mean for business? And
No, isn't
why
it?
is it? I could just imagine someone saying, "Oh, what is that? What is that all about?"
Yeah. And I think it's just, and again, if happiness is the, it's not even an end goal, it's just the underlying thing that we want. We have to live in alignment with who we are, what's
Mhm.
important to us. The most important thing is not like, how do I say this? Like subordinating yourself to a goal that's not authentic to who you really are. So sometimes leaders, they're in their position, they make a lot of money, they have a lot of pressure, and they're dealing with things. And I always have to come back to, like it's like, what's the value of you doing this? Like, what's the value? So it's the value. If the value is money, then we focus on how much money you're making, and this is the reason why you're stressed out. Or it's oh, everyone has such a different set of values. It's so it's hard to like align that. But yeah, how do you do it? You have to find little bits and pieces. People think happiness, like you said, it's not like a romance thing.
Mhm.
I feel like I found that the four things that people distill, like if I talk to people, that I can say that four things that people want: freedom, um, peace, love, and joy. Freedom, peace, love, and joy. So when people are upset or not happy, it's probably because they're not feeling one of these things. And if it's freedom, then we work on finding ways for freedom, right? There's always something we can do to move towards a better place. Do we ever get there? Does anyone ever live in a life of pure bliss? I don't think so. I don't. Like, I recognize that life is polar. There is the up and the down, the black and the white, the night and the day, hot and cold, left and right. There's so much polarity that we do our best to find that center and have a little variation within that center. But I think it's impossible to be like, yes, I am working this high power job and I'm just at bliss and happy all the time. We're looking for these moments. We're constantly needing to find them amidst the chaos.
I always love that one statement, something about you may have attained bliss, but you still need to do the laundry.
Yeah. Or the moment you think you've attained bliss, just spend 2 weeks with your parents.
Yeah. Yeah, right. These are powerful concepts, though, that you have underway of freedom, peace, love, joy. And yet they're not often the language inside corporations.
No, but it's changing. Let me tell you, it is changing. I will share this with you, and you might kick me off your podcast, but I started off as an astrologer. And you might think, wait, what? Astrology? Like, that's so out there. But what I learned from that was cycles. We go through cycles. And if we just take all the woo away from it, I am simply looking at cycles, whether financial cycles, fashion cycles, life cycles. So I track life cycles and personality. So after 10,000 plus personal sessions with people, I understood the psychology behind people. That's what I used to write my assessments. I understood people because I got to talk to people. Then, like, why did I remember that? So that used to be like, don't talk to companies that you do astrology. Like, have that website hidden, do it on the side. But when you go to companies, show up as a professional. Like, use your left brain, your knowledge. So I still buy into that in some way, shape, or form. But let me tell you how blown away I have been. Do you know that ever since 2020, you can Google me and you'll see I'm an astrologer and I do multiple other things, and I'm coming to you with my corporate hat on.
Sure.
Do you know how many large companies, included the large Fortune 500 companies that I work with, they will actually lead in their introduction of me that she's an astrologer. And I'm mortified because that part of me has been hidden for so long, but people clap, people feel engaged. They're like, oh my God, that is so interesting. The world is changing. People used to run away when they found out I was an astrologer. They thought I'd gone bonkers. But now I actually attract people because people are curious. Who am I? Is there meaning to my life? Like, what does that mean? I'm a Gemini. I'm a this, I'm a that. So people have questions about themselves. So I feel like it's becoming more human. And so when I say even like whether it's McDonald's or whether it's Gap or whether it's these big companies, leaders, like full on C-suite people, they're like, can I get a session from you? I want to learn more about myself. Like, so I feel like that is sort of dissolving even in myself. It's a little bit like odd to me, but I feel like we are in a place where people want whatever tools they can get to get more understanding about themselves and others so that we can live a life that's as filled with freedom, joy, love, and peace, because that's ultimately would be awesome, right? If we could live a life where I'm free to do what I want, I feel at peace for the most time, I have love in my life from friends and family, and I have joy. Those are the 4 things that I feel we're all looking for, and I try to guide people towards that or see where they're not measuring up.
Well, it's so refreshing. And I think it goes back to the top of our podcast when we were talking about work life blend. And you refer to it as work life integration. And I think your own story demonstrates, our ability to integrate more of who we are into our personal and professional personas really enables us to do better work and to be more present with others. So you're a walking role model for what you speak, it sounds like.
So no one wakes up in the morning and says, I want to have a negative day. I want to have
Right.
a bad day. And we all wake up with this desire to feel good, do good, be good. But then we might go to work or go into life and life beats us down. And then we have to manage that. So I really think that this whole last 2020 onwards thing is really causing us all to get more real with who we are. Like, think about all the Zoom meetings where you got babies in the background and dogs running by. That would have never happened before. Things were so siloed. So I feel like those silos between our own selves and between us and others are breaking down. I mean, we've had CMOs there with babies while they're giving like major meetings. And that made everyone so much more human, which means that we are going to have emotions. We are going to have aspects of ourselves come up at work. So I feel like it's moving towards a healthier place because of that in some way. It's so new.
You've had the opportunity to live in different parts of the world, Hawaii,
Taiwan.
Japan,
Yep.
Taiwan. Um, do you notice differences in terms of culture and how they affect the happiness quotient?
Yeah, I do. And I think so cultures are, it's like, when you talk about different language, even in my assessment, if you've ever used the phrase, I feel out of my element,
Mm.
or I don't know how to talk to that person, they're so different. So elemental differences are very much like cultural differences. So we have multiple cultures within each culture of a business in the form of human beings. And for me, living in all these cultures has caused me to understand that there's no one way to look at things. The ability to see multiple perspectives and not judge it as right or wrong is really the key to living effortlessly. And I'm not judging you for being that. I'm recognizing you're this. And instead of judging, so we judge the people around us because we think they should be more like us. When in fact, when you live all over the world, nobody is like anyone else, and neither is right or wrong. So it's sort of like that understanding of just letting go and being who you are, recognizing that other people are just being who they are. And if I could bring my best self to the table of work and you can make a little effort to do that, we can get along better and move forward in our initiatives. And it's an effort.
So true. And you remind me of one of my experiences in my very late 20s, maybe it was my early 30s, as a Peace Corps volunteer. And, here I
Ah,
was sent to what some described at that time as the fourth world, on a remote island in the speck of, in the Pacific Ocean,
yes.
where there wasn't, there wasn't even a cash currency. Um, and to see and to recognize that happiness can be attained in so many different ways,
Yeah.
um, and to let go of some of that, I think it's made me probably a more effective consultant and coach to others, is to
Yeah. Yeah.
recognize. And I'm so appreciative that you bring that experience, Alice.
It's so interesting. And I'll bring some science into this, right? Ever since 2008, scientists have found that happiness is a skill. Just like how you learn to type, you learn to use the computer, you learn to drive a car, you learn happiness. It's not a feeling. It's not like this, oh, I want to be happy. It's like, what are you looking at? What are you focusing on? If you're focusing on where you're lacking, you're going to just feel a bunch of lack. But if you're focusing on where you're doing well, where you're making progress, where things are going well, that computes into your brain and you feel good. One of the best feelings that we can have as human beings is feeling productive. It's ranked up there with like sex and happiness and good food, productive. So when we are productive, we feel good. So we look for, like, that's kind of some of the philosophies that we teach at Happiness U, is like, where is it working for you? What are you doing? What have you accomplished? We look to lack so much that we need to look towards what's good to create that positivity. And I've noticed that it's a mindset. The more you look for what works, what you're doing, the more we consciously look for it, the more we will see it. And so there's a lot of strategies where we can actually learn, quote, happiness and feel better about it. So it's a mindset for sure. It's a
Well,
mindset.
Alice, let's say that one of our HR leaders, maybe a chief people officer in our audience, is listening to today's podcast, or to this episode of the People Dividend, and they can visit you at yourhappinessyou.com. They can learn more about Alice Inoue and what you do. What are the outcomes they might say after a session with you, after you keynoting, after adopting your personality assessment? How might they describe some of the benefits of working with you and your team?
Yeah, you've asked the best questions. They would say, I feel empowered because I show you what's possible, because we focus so much on where we're lacking. So I think if we're going to distill it down, it's like, I'm empowered. I know what to do. Here is a step. All we want to know is how to move forward. And sometimes we feel stuck. So I think if nothing else, that's kind of what I show, that you're never stuck. There's always an option. So let's find a movement forward, because that's how we feel good. We feel empowered to move forward. So I think that would be it. Out of all the things, it's like, You find a solution, you find an answer, you find a step. That's
Well,
all.
that's so
That's all.
great.
And
Maybe
if
that's
yep,
a way as we begin to wrap up to think about things that uh, by finding our happiness, by finding we get unstuck and we're able to move forward, perhaps in different, better ways. And
yeah,
if that's what you're doing, Alice, in a way, uh, that's a great contribution to your clients, to the organizations they serve, and to the world. If just one final question, if you were to give a piece of advice or a piece of guidance to an organizational leader about taking the first steps on this journey towards creating better workplaces, happier workplaces, what would that piece of advice or that piece of guidance be for the remainder of 2024?
I would say one of the things that would be a really great first step would be to recognize that you are in exactly the right place doing exactly the right thing. Oftentimes we think we could have been more, done more. The past is gone. Like whatever you've done or haven't done, it's no longer. And so I think it's a lot of times we carry a lot of emotional drag of like where we made mistakes. So it's getting present and then moving forward, because you can't be going backwards in a car and move forward. You have to go neutral. So it's finding that neutral space, that balanced place, that ability to take a deep breath and say, whatever happened yesterday or last year or whatever, even if it's still lingering, what can I do today? And it sounds so simple, but I really feel like everyone comes to the plate with all this should haves and would haves. And even if they don't say it, even if they consciously know it, the emotional drag is there. Like we all know it, but how do you get present with it? And it really is acceptance, like accepting this is where it's at. That's I guess what I would say.
Such great messages from Alice Inoue, and please visit her at Your Happiness You. You'll find it in the show notes later if you as you review the episode. It's been an absolute delight for me to be in conversation with you, Alice. The highlight of my day, maybe the highlight of my week, and to
Yay.
think about happiness and the possibilities that you're
Yeah.
making for others in so many ways. So, Alice Inoue and yourhappinessyou.com, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mike.
And for all of our listeners, until the next episode of The People Dividend, stay well.